Welcome back to Southfield, everyone. Today I wanted to talk about some of the custom MOW equipment that I have and how I make it. So after the derailment video, I got to thinking that I haven't done any MOW vehicle work in a while. I was on a big kick for MOW vehicles a few years ago. Built most of those vehicles at that time, but it's been a while since I've done anything, so realized that that just wasn't enough MOW crew there. So I decided I wanted to build at least one other vehicle. So I went on a search to see what I could find, and while I was doing it, I figured I might as well explain how exactly it is that I do this, because if you look at these trucks that I've showed in the past couple of slides here, including the fire truck and the boom truck, none of those actually exist as they are ready-made anywhere. So I've kind of toyed with it a little bit, and I figured out a couple of tips and tricks on how I can create these more or less period correct, or more period correct, I guess, MOW equipment vehicles to the early 80s, which is the era that I model. Obviously, Boley, is currently owned by Walthers or whatever it is producing a lot of nice quality vehicles, but they all have the international cabs on them, and those are way too modern for the early 80s. And outside of that, there really isn't a whole heck of a lot out there. So in this video, I'm just going to show a couple of the tricks that I use to create some of these older looking and more era correct MOW vehicles. So stand by. So here is the secret recipe. It is a Walthers Scenemaster old Boley truck that's on the left with the international cab, and a Mini Metals International Harvester truck that's on the right. As you can see by them sitting in front of each other, if you take the cab off of the Mini Metals truck, it lines up pretty well with the Boley truck. So in essence, yes, what I am doing is I'm taking the cab off the Mini Metals truck and putting it onto the Boley/Walthers truck. You start by taking the cab off of the actual Mini Metals truck. You have to drill out the rivet that attaches it to the bottom of the frame. If you do it carefully, you are able to do this without damaging the actual chassis of the Mini Metals truck for other uses. So, got everything taken apart. Now it goes in a paint booth, coat of primer, and then coat of yellow paint that is actually spray paint in this particular case. This is Rust-Oleum Golden Sunset, which is a gloss paint, and it is actually a pretty good ringer for C&NW Old Yellow. So here I am playing around with some different decal layout. I wanted to go kind of a caboose type of theme because I really enjoy the caboose decal layout on the C&NW cabooses. Keep in mind, this is completely freelanced. I'm not building this on any kind of prototype, so I'm just kind of letting my imagination run wild and try to kind of design what it is that I think looks good for what I want it to look like. As you can see, the ultimate decal layout did not turn out to be what I was initially laying out, mostly because those decals were old Harold King decals and they were just too old to be used. So I ended up using some decals from a micro scale C&NW caboose set, And then at the same time, I decided that I like C&W green, so I decided to paint the underframe and all the underneath components in green for a nice contrasting color. So here we have the truck in the beginning stages of assembly. I think that the green chassis was a very good idea. Yellow wheels obviously make all the sense in the world. And right now we are going to go ahead and line up the box and see if the cab fits as intended. So the only downside to putting a Mini Metals cab on the Boley slash Walthers frame is the fact that there's no original way to attach it. So it does actually have to be glued onto the frame, and it is a one-shot, one-kill type of situation that is non-removable afterwards. And so this is a perfect example for why you should measure 7 times and cut once. Out of multiple trucks that I've built in this exact same manner, this is the only one where the center line of the Boley axle mounts did not line up with the wheel wells on the Mini Metals cab. As you can see, well, you can see on the right side, it just literally doesn't line up. Unfortunately, the cab versus the box itself, there was just about a 3 millimeter difference there. So I had to make some modifications, as you'll see in the next pictures. So here's a good shot of exactly why the axle would not line up with the wheel wells if I was to actually put the axle in the original location on the Boley frame. Keep in mind that this is the only truck that I have this issue with. All of the other trucks have lined up perfectly. So this was the only one, just simply because of the fact that this is a box truck and there was nothing in between the original cab and the box that I could modify. So they just needed to butt up against each other, and there was just nothing I could have done about that short of grinding the cab down or cutting a hole in the box, which I didn't want to do. So I did the simplest, most effective thing I possibly could, as opposed to putting the axle directly through the axle hole that's in the actual frame. I put the axle directly in front of it with a little bit of notching in the frame to keep it in place, and that happened to give me the correct wheelbase so it would line up with the fenders on the actual cab itself. And so here's a final product after the axle was installed in its new modified location. I think it came out really well. Definitely glad that I decided to do the green frame on it, because I think that that's a nice touch with the green bumpers. The paint was fantastic. I'm very surprised at how well this color mirrors C&W old or traditional yellow. Very happy with it. And overall, I think this came out to be a very good, unique project. Gave me the opportunity to use various caboose decals that I wanted to display, but at the same time didn't necessarily have a caboose ready for them at the current moment. And here's a strange added bonus to it. I ended up taking the original Mini Metals frame, cutting the front half of it off, leaving the rear axle in place, and making it into a trailer, because it was laying here on the bench, and I didn't really intend to do this, but it was laying there, and I was just going to put it in a box and do something with it later, and I figured, what the hell, let me get some steel welded to the front of it for a tongue, and threw a little bit of lumber on it, weathered it up, and now I've got a trailer. So I took 2 trucks, made 1 full truck and a trailer out of it, all for a grand total of, I believe, $25, plus decals and paint and just time. So overall, very pleased with this project. So this is how I do this particular modification to these Boley International trucks. So I have 4 or 5 international cabs laying around right now that I don't know what to do with. If anybody needs any international cabs, let me know. I'll ship them to you for free, because they're too new for my layout. But these nice Mini Metals International Harvester cabs, probably a little bit too old for the early 80s, but they fit a heck of a lot better than the new international cabs that are more of a late 90s, early 2000s look. This fire truck was actually a crew cab, which is why there's a gap between the cab and the actual truck body right now. Obviously, there's no crew cab available in International Harvester cabs from Mini Metals, so I did what I could. This was actually the first one that I did. This is what gave me this idea. And I think it looks pretty good. I just put a plate steel back there so that there's some place for the firefighters to stand. But this one was real easy to do because I took a crew cab off of it and I put a single cab on it, and there was no interference between the cab and a truck body, unlike in the last project that I just finished. This boom truck, single cab came off of it, single cab went on it. I was able to modify the outriggers directly behind the cab to be able to get the clearance that I needed to get the cab to line up with the original front axle without having any kind of issues. This truck is a utility company truck for installing telephone poles and things along those lines. But it had a lot of good equipment on the back of it, so I figured I'd use it and, you know, use a little bit of modeler's license on it. Cab, same thing as the boom truck. There were outriggers between the cab and the truck body, and there was just no way to get those things back in there, so I ended up just ditching the outriggers altogether for the sake of having the cab line up with the wheelbase of the truck.